Welcome to episode 611 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and I didn't think you'd be seeing me before the match against Real Valladolid, but there was way too much going on this week not to do another top 5 for the week with all the news and everything happening, so here we are. And by this week, I'm actually just talking about the last 48 or so hours of all the news around FC Barcelona, especially concerning the transfer window. So particularly with said transfer window closing, there is a lot to get to. Mostly bad, some good news. So let's dive right in. Topic 1 is get better Marc Bernal. All Kool-Aids feared it when he went down against Rayo Vallecano, but Marc Bernal, unfortunately, yes, the greatest fears of Kool-Aids have come to fruition. The 17-year-old joined the ACL club along with Ansu Fati and Gavi as Barca teenagers and will be out for the next 9 to 12 months. You know I would have been gutted if this happened with him playing for Barca Athletic, but it's absolutely worst case scenario now with him in the first team and looking to be important for Hansi Flick at that position of the double pivot. But if we're already saying that a 17-year-old has become irreplaceable this season for the first team, and we really believe that, then yes, this team is in a lot of trouble this year in the first team. But I don't think that Barca's season was ever going to be pass or fail or should have been based on Marc Bernal. However, not to contradict myself immediately like you know I always do, but what is true is that the Barcelona first team and Hansi Flick will definitely miss him this season. It's just a matter of how much they miss him. And they're obviously going to miss him even more this season because of the transfer window and the injuries to De Jong and Gavi. But before we talk transfers or lack thereof this season, I do want to put on the record about the optimism I have about Marc Bernal and his long-term future. Bernal has a long way back. That is true. We don't know what kind of player he'll be when he returns. However, with his stature and skills, not really relying on his speed and dynamism the way that wingers have in the past, aka Ansu Fati, I would bet that he comes back as good as he ever was, more than I would guess that he's never going to be the same player again. And even the player he was that we just saw in the first 3 matches of this season, that's not even a player that is fully developed into the best version of himself. Meanwhile, the club is doing the right thing. I know I said it, the club is actually doing something right now. And doing the right thing is extending his contract until 2029, and they're looking to do that in the next few weeks. That is the right thing to do. Take care of this kid and give him all the time in the world to get back to his best. Even if it takes him 2 years to look like who he was at 17, I'd take those first 3 matches from a 19-year-old coming up from Barca's academy any day of the week. And because he's so young, hopefully the recovery goes even better and quicker than expected. So get better soon, Marc Bernal. And in the meantime, what is Hansi Flick and company going to do? It has to be Marc Casado getting major minutes now, and he has got to be good enough. And I guess Dani Olmo will have to be pushed a bit deeper in this system. Maybe you play Rafinha in front of him. And I guess it is Pedri who'll be playing the pivot for at least the next few weeks and months. Honestly, tomorrow's game against Real Valladolid will say a lot about Flick's ideas for the next however long until any cavalry arrives, whether in the January transfer window or injuries or Eric Garcia. Topic 2 is transfer window slam shut. All right, if that first topic wasn't depressing enough, we have to talk about the transfer window, which is also not full of any good news. The official report is that Barcelona will likely not be making any deals for the first team until the window closes. If there are any surprises, obviously I'll be talking about it on the watch along and post game after Valladolid, but I don't see that happening. Because the only way that happens is if there's movement with the Nike deal or an investor comes out of the woodwork for Barca Vision, and those things don't happen quickly. The other way would be a huge exit, but just looking at the squad, there are 2 healthy center backs, 2 healthy deeper midfielders, and the attack is still arguably missing a dynamic left winger. So yeah, I can't see anyone more leaving after Gundogan and the number of players on the margins that were also shipped out to loans or permanent sales. Even a last-minute deal would be shocking to me after what I would call a mini debacle involving Liverpool's Stefan Bajcetic. He's a Spanish kid who was choosing between a loan to RB Salzburg or a loan to Barcelona, and even his own father came out and said that no duh, he picked Barcelona. Thiago Alcantara was also reportedly taking the lead in the recruitment, so that was going to help Barcelona. And the loan deal would have been $4 million, which is pretty high for a loan deal, and with no buy option. So not really a great loan for Barcelona, but certainly an emergency situation. But even then, with a loan for $4 million, FFP wasn't going to make it happen. But we also kind of knew that after all the work that had to be done to get Dani Olmo registered in time. Positive results will make us all forget these troubles in the next few weeks, or some of them, especially when the Nike deal is done and Barca is finally, and I mean finally, back to the 1-to-1. But if results aren't going Barca's way, that built-in excuse of squad depth will be screamed from every rooftop in Catalonia. And I'll admit it, I'll probably be saying it quite a bit into this microphone as well, about that really being a built-in excuse and not being able to make an actual referendum on Hansi Flick until he has enough players in his squad to feel like he has the proper rotations to do what he wants to do. Which brings me to a Patreon question from Daniel regarding squad depth. With so many injuries already piling up and our transfer business being so light due to financial restrictions, how much of an impact do you think this will have on our performance this season? Now, pessimistically and realistically, I do think it will affect the Liga race in negative ways. Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid have both thrown Barcelona a lifeline early by dropping 4 points from their first 3 games, and Barca does have a reasonable domestic schedule until like November, so they could survive. But once the Champions League starts up, that's just too many matches and not enough players, and I'm big concerned about the league table. With how long the absences are still set to be, not a single more player can go down at this point. Even Barca Athletic are dealing with a pile up of injuries. They currently have 10 players on the sideline with some sort of issue, including Danny Rodriguez. And the Frankie de Jong news about surgery, will he, won't he, that isn't helping anybody either. The report of him refusing surgery and trying to return after the international break is coming from sources favorable to the club, so I really want to throw a lot of cold water on that. But it is still a worrying report if it is true that he may never be himself without that surgery. Again, I don't know how much I believe that. Obviously, his contract makes him less than a beloved figure from the board and from a lot of people around the club. But having gone 4 months neglecting surgery, who knows what that means for his playing future either. If there was any positive news about De Jong or Gavi wasn't actually coming off an ACL injury in November when he returns, I would be more optimistic, but also losing Marc Bernal is basically worst case scenario now for Barcelona. Christensen being out long-term is also another nail in the coffin. And I said it in that first headline almost in jest, but it's not. For a guy that was almost out of the club last week, back to Girona, it might really be in Eric Garcia we trust for a few weeks and months going forward in that midfield. Topic 3 is Champions League draw. So from negative more to that neutral territory of feelings, because the Champions League draw for the league phase was also today. The results are Bayern at home, Borussia Dortmund away, that's from pot 1, Atalanta at home and Benfica away, that's from pot 2, Young Boys at home and Red Star Belgrade away from pot 3, and Brest at home and Monaco away from pot 4. Honestly, it could have been slightly better, but it could have also been way worse, especially from pot 2 looking at UPSG. Avoiding all Premier League clubs also isn't a bad thing, I think. And Hansi Flick and Danny Olmo's familiarity with the Bundesliga clubs, that may matter, gives me a little bit of hope, at least, with what should be the 2 biggest games of that league phase. And while I'm still trying to wrap my head around the new format, it is just basically 2 extra matches in what replaces the group stage. But also it's 2 extra matches after all these players needed way less games. That's not great either. I'll wait until the end of the league phase for a final judgment, but like most changes to formats, we'll get used to it and hear a lot of arguments for it, which are usually said by those who make the most money with it. And there's going to be tons of arguments against the change in format until everybody gets used to it, or you hear something good or bad from the players. Topic 4 is Pedro Soma on loan. Finally, a little bit of good news, but I guess with the name that you don't really know. So it maybe is just news, not even good news, because I don't want to be overhyping players. But as Arsene Kvev FCB had said on the show when we did the La Masia tier list,
as far as I know, Barcelona is looking to sign a midfielder who is also playing for a youth national team of where he is from. But he's playing in Spain, let's say that. But it's not closed as far as I know, but they're working on it.
It is at least something to get excited if you care about the academy and maybe a future player for Barcelona. Pedro Soma is an American midfielder who was playing at UE Cornellà. He is now signed on loan with an option to buy. The 18-year-old will probably play for Barça Athletic, but it looks like he's officially with the U19s, so that should tell you how little you should expect to see him with the first team, especially this season. Or not, because U19s players could very well feature with the first team and have been for a few seasons now, and Barcelona probably need other midfielders. But again, less likely for a kid who just showed up and plays the same position. Is he an attacking midfielder? Is he a central midfielder? Is he a deeper midfielder? He's a bit too young, and he had to do a bit too much for that Cornellà team. So at the moment, we just know that he plays midfield with a bunch of Barça Athletic kids playing the same position. What I will say is I would expect a La Masia 60-second video on him sooner than later, so I guess that's something to look forward to. And topic 5 is Barça Femení cruising through the preseason. We finally got to, I'd say, the good news, because yes, Barça Femení destroying everyone in their path isn't necessarily news either, but I will say that the preseason going as well, integrating all the new players, that's been good news. 5-1 against Hoffenheim, 5-0 against Montpellier, 2-0 against Milan, 5-2 against Bay FC. And while they did lose a few names, everyone who left was kind of expected. Lucy Bronze, Sandra Panos, and Mariona. Those are the big names, and a few top talents like Lucia Corrales, Julia Dragoni, and Bruna Villamala. They went out on loan for more minutes, which hopefully is good for Barcelona's future. Coming in has been Ellie Roebuck, goalkeeper from Man City, Iwa Pajor, forward from Wolfsburg, and midfielder Maria Perez, returned from a successful loan with Sevilla. And then I guess the new name, Kike Nazareth, is a 21-year-old Portuguese midfielder who signed from Benfica, who should be a rotation piece. All four have played in the preseason and look like they fit just fine with this all-conquering side. And it has been fun to finally see Alexia Putellas back in a preseason again, and it's also been pretty fun to see Claudia Pina with the number 9 shirt. It's not really, again, a top 5 piece of news, but the Barça Femení is still a favorite to win every competition they play in this season. And when the first team and the men have the negativity off the field, it's always good to remind you that the Barça Femení also exists and is also beginning their season. But there is still good news for the Barça first team. They're the only team in the Liga to take 9 points from their first 3 matches. The Culés do not have to sit in the transfer window sadness for that long because match day 4 kicks off in less than 36 hours against Real Valladolid. The watch along will be on Tifo, 11 a.m. East Coast time, 5 p.m. local time. Promo code is Hola Culés, and it's free to get in with the link in the description or show notes. If you don't have time for that, and you want to potentially get in a future show, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts or subscribing on YouTube as I'm really close. We're talking about less than 250 people, and then we are at 20,000, and what a journey it has been. So subscribe if you're not already on the YouTube channel. And as always, until I see you in, I guess, a few hours, and that's live this time around, Forza Barça.